Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. We all know that children are the future, but a people who refuse to protect their children will have no future. Our children are under constant assault in this sick, racist country, and few places are as perilous for black children as the schools. Last month, a so-called teacher in Park Hill, Missouri named Stuart Sullinger saw some black students walking down the hallway, and he decided that would be a good time for him to tell them about the N-word. He said it to them several times. The black students went to the school authorities, of course, and the school authorities did absolutely nothing, of course, because the kids were told they didn't have any proof. And it wasn't the first time this Sullinger scumbag has done this. Only a few days earlier, this Sullinger person was caught on video being confronted by a black student in class, and that black student was telling him, hey, you don't have the right to use the N-word. Sullinger is seen saying that the young man had used the N-word, so that gives him license to do it too. The young man in particular let this bigot know in no uncertain terms that he can't, as he should. The school board suspended the black student for 10 days, and even then he now must meet with school administrators to determine if he can be allowed to return to school. Now keep in mind, this incident happened before the one where this Sullinger creep was harassing the black students in the hallway. And the school didn't do anything about that. So what changed? What changed was that the students organized themselves this time and they occupied the school gym, and they said that they would continue to occupy it until this racist was fired. First of all, good for them. Young people need to always be willing to take matters into their own hands when they're facing injustice. But secondly, they shouldn't have to, because that's supposed to be their parents' jobs, or in most of their cases, their mother's job. Black children should never be the ones who are having to stand up to racist teachers all by themselves. That's their parents' job. The black parents should have been raising hell about this, not leaving it up to the children to fend for themselves. And this is the whole problem. These white supremacists know that they can mistreat black children because they have a school administrative infrastructure that will cover for them, protect them, and make sure that the worst that could possibly happen is they have to get transferred to another school. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is, and has always been, that the white supremacists know that the black parents won't do anything about it. Too many black people have children and then don't raise them. They don't want to hear what the kid's going through in their life, and they can't be bothered to protect their kids, so the children become prey for these vermin. See, with the first incident, there was video of it, but it didn't get any attention, so the school ignored it. With the second incident, however, there wasn't video, but the kids raised hell about it. And that, combined with the video of the first incident, was what forced the school board to finally say they would look into it. But these are white supremacists we're talking about, so you can guess what came next. Just a few days ago, the Park Hill School Board claimed that they were going to start proceedings to fire Sullinger. Of course they were. But he does have due process rights, and they have to observe those. I mean, it's not their fault that their refusal to fire this clown gave him plenty of time to submit a notice of retirement, which of course they accepted. So this piece of trash is going to be collecting a taxpayer-provided pension after he spent his last days on the job racially abusing black children. If that doesn't make your blood boil, you don't have a conscience and you don't have a brain. Because we all know that if this had been a black teacher assailing white students racially, then due process would have been damned. He wouldn't have gotten a chance to retire. They would have had him fired after the first incident. It never would have made it to a second. And if he still managed to get his retirement, then you would have the white kid's parents demanding that laws be changed, and the school board would be right out there with them. So next time a black teacher got sharp with a white student, they could snatch his retirement. That's what they would be doing. Now, this can happen for us too, but those black parents who apparently have better things to do with their time than to protect their children, they're going to have to change that. And they can start by changing that school board. Now, as you can see from the makeup of the Park Hill School Board, it's all white, except for one very lonely black member. And this board understands exactly what their job really is. It's to act as a rubber stamp committee for white supremacy in the classroom. Their job is to protect racists in the schools, not to punish them. See, under white supremacy, the 3 R's are reading, writing, and racism. And this isn't the only incident like this. Because earlier this week, at the exact same time that Stuart Sullivan was submitting his notice of early retirement in Missouri, over in North Carolina, a math teacher at McDowell High School named Jack Jensen was being allowed to return to the classroom only a couple of months on paid leave after his own racist incident. The video shows the teacher standing in front of the class, his arm around a black student, and he's heard saying, "I'm a white man, so I can't say nigger." But unlike Sullinger, not only did this racist not get removed from school grounds, they let this piece of trash go back to the classroom. This with all the evidence to show that he had done this. The school district said that they had done an investigation and his actions had been addressed. So you know the fix is in. They're making it clear that they're going to protect this guy. He's doing their bidding. And what was the black community in McDowell County, North Carolina's response to this? This is a racial attack on their children. What was their response? Well, apparently they have a so-called community forum who has announced that they would be, quote, collecting stories and data to be able to hold the McDowell County school system responsible and have a higher standard in issues of racism and bullying and incidents in our schools. So instead of having the white supremacists punished, what they're going to do is to collect some of the white supremacists' greatest hits. See, this is the problem that black people have with all those police murders of black citizens. All you're going to have is just a collection of snuff films unless you make it a point that you are going to make sure these racists get punished, or you're going to do it yourself. Because you understand that the so-called authorities are protecting these racists. They're friends with these racists. The racists are doing what these so-called authorities want. These are their buddies, their pals. They get together, they're married to each other, in many cases they're family members. This is not happening in spite of the school authorities, it's happening because of them. As long as black people continue to complain to the DA and complain to the police chief about violent cops who had murdered black people, nothing changed. But in 2020, when the people took to the streets and said, we're going to handle this problem ourselves, all of a sudden things began to change. Now, what does that teach you? Oh, and by the way, as for this so-called community forum, after they get through putting together a list of racist incidents so the white supremacists can have a trip down memory lane and a nice little chuckle to themselves and say, yeah, this is the stuff that we did to the, hey, I remember I was the one who called these kids nigger that time. They get to chuckle about it. Then what happens? What are they going to do after they go ahead and compile some of the white supremacists' greatest hits? Then what? Well, apparently the plan is that they will share their data with the school board and tell them what changes they'd like to see. Oh, they also said they would be offering free racial equity training to anyone in the county. I'm not making that up. They actually said that. We're offering free racial equity training to everyone in the county who wants it. Now, the director of this forum, she complained that they, I guess she's talking about the school board, are not making it mandatory for any teacher to take it. So you're going to continue having these incidents when teachers are trying to have a teaching moment, not realizing what they're doing and how they're continuing the discrimination that's been going on for years. First of all, this wasn't an attempt at a teaching moment. She's full of crap. This was an anti-black racist blatantly disrespecting black children in class. Secondly, this woman is making excuses for this scumbag, and that's why the white authorities let him come back to class. Why not? If the black adults in McDowell County are going to make excuses for the racist and treat it like no big deal, then the school board already knows they've got cover. This is treasonous behavior for any black person to do what this director of a community forum did. To ascribe decent or otherwise honorable motive to someone who you know full well was just being plain racist, that's the worst kind of betrayal of black children. But some of these Negroes out there can only think about being in the same room with some white supremacist administrator because it makes them feel important. A teaching moment. They were trying to have a teaching moment. It's hard to imagine much lower contempt for black children than to say something like that. Racial equity training. As if that's actually going to do anything. The white supremacists don't need training, they need punishment. The so-called director of this forum, she said, "We don't attack people, we attack problems." Yeah, well, the problem with the white supremacists is they are the problem. White supremacy is not some sort of amorphous thing that falls out of the sky like rain. It doesn't just happen like a doggone heart attack or a meteor strike. It's the behavior of people. You're not going to be able to deal with white supremacy and anti-black racism until you deal with the people who are carrying it out. But of course, that's not her mission at all. That's not what these clowns want. Just another group of black bootlicks who are trying to figure out how they can start themselves some little racial sensitivity consulting hustle. So we can see why these black kids are having to stand up for themselves. These are the so-called adults who are supposed to be protecting them? See, you have right-wing racists who are passing laws to make it a civil crime to talk about race and class, or to make a student feel guilty because of their race. Well, then, that means garbage like this Sullinger fool and this other creep, they could be personally sued by the parents, right? Now, these two incidents I told you about, this is what's happened just this week. Obviously, there are far more. But I post these morning briefings early, and I know a lot of you probably haven't had breakfast yet. Now, we already know that a lot of these MAGA maggots, they're wanting to show people their white rage, and that these displays of racial hostility are them showing their little power. To them, this is how they demonstrate their courage for white supremacy. Look at the risk I'm willing to take. I want a pat on the back because I'm going to show that I can do the most outrageous acts of racial hostility. As they see it, they've been watching Fox News all day, or they listen to a steady diet of right-wing hate radio, and they are reminded that being white isn't as special as it used to be, or at least it doesn't seem to be anymore, and that makes them angry. It makes them furious. The right wing has cultivated a culture of racist exhibitionism, where these racists want to be heroes to the Tucker Carlsons and Joe Rogans by showing them that they're willing to lose their jobs just to be openly racist. That's what they've done. They've made a cottage industry out of anti-black racism because they praise it, they put it on a pedestal, they openly defend it. This is part of how the white supremacists are attempting to embolden themselves. You want to get praise and accolades among the white supremacists? Make the news for some outrageous act of anti-black racism, especially if you're doing it against black children. You do that, and why, they'll set up a GoFundMe for you and everything else. We're up against an organized and united offense. We require an even more organized and united defense to protect these children. Now, the kids were able to organize themselves and force that Sullinger scumbag out of their school, but the problem is they shouldn't have had to. These adults have no excuse. Each one of these children represents at least one adult who should be that child's biggest and fiercest advocate and protector. If someone was criticizing one of these parents for not raising their kids right, then you know that they'd be ready to fight. But if someone waits until the parent is gone and calls the child the N-word, well, the parents are going to be nonchalant about it. They'll leave it up to the local community forum to set up a free racial equity training seminar. We live in a country where anti-black racism is the law of the land and the national pastime. But we have to be honest about something. A large part of the problem is that we as a group do not consistently and aggressively impose penalties for practicing anti-black racism. We have not firmly established what the red lines are and then enforce those red lines. When you make the bastards pay a price for harming or disrespecting us, then they'll learn pretty quick to leave us alone. You are not going to outsource the protection of black children to any school board or anyone else. It is not merely your duty and obligation to make sure that black children are protected. It is also supposed to be your pride. You should be proud to be standing up for your children against these white supremacists. You should be proud to be standing up to these white supremacists to their faces. Because as long as we keep giving these weak responses to anti-black racism against black children, as long as we keep making excuses for it, as long as we are inconsistent about being aggressive in fighting these anti-black racists, then these Klansmen in the classroom are going to learn that abusing and disrespecting black children is a crime that we will let them commit for free. And black children are going to learn that we don't think that they're important enough to protect. Failing a class is bad. but failing your own child is inexcusable. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Ginger Vine, Detroit Beauty Supply, Keith, Nora Brown, and Chaz. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.